You hear it all the time, right? AI is going to change the world. But how are people actually using it, right now? Well, a brand new report from the Anthropic Economic Index gives us some pretty surprising data-driven answers. So let's dive in.
Okay, the very first number in this report is just wow. 40%. That's the percentage of US employees who now say they use AI at work. And get this, that number has doubled in just the last 2 years. This isn't just steady growth, this is an absolute explosion. And this timeline really puts that speed into perspective. I mean, think about it. It took more than 30 years for electricity to get to most rural homes, about 20 years for the personal computer to become a household thing. Even the internet took around 5 years to get to mass adoption. Generative AI did it in 2. It's a completely different league of technology adoption. So yeah, the speed is absolutely off the charts. It's unprecedented. But the real story here is way more complex than just how fast this is all happening. Because it turns out this insane growth isn't uniform at all. It's not happening everywhere, and it's not happening in the same way. It's concentrated, it's uneven, and that's where we start to see these really interesting economic fault lines starting to appear. And that leads us right into the second huge finding from this report, a massive geographic AI divide. So now we're shifting from how fast to where, and maybe more importantly, why it's taking root in certain places more than others. To really get this divide, we got to get familiar with one key metric they use. It's called the Anthropic AI Usage Index, or AUI. It's a really simple but powerful idea. Basically, it checks if a region's AI use is higher or lower than you'd expect just based on its working population. So, if your AUI is over 1, you're punching way above your weight.
And when you look at the global numbers, wow, the picture is so stark. You've got Singapore with an AUI over 4.5. That means they're using AI at a rate 4.5 times what you'd guess from their population size. Now compare that to a huge emerging economy like India with an AUI of just 0.27. This really highlights this massive split between smaller, advanced economies and the developing world. Now, you'd probably think that within one country, like the US, things would be a little more even. But as this report shows, the story there gets even more surprising. And here's the shocker, it's not just Silicon Valley leading the charge. I mean, look at this. On a per-person basis, the District of Columbia and Utah are actually outpacing California. This suggests that AI adoption isn't just about being near the big tech hubs. It's driven by the specific needs of local economies, like all the government and administrative work you find in DC. So this brings up a really important question. How exactly are people using AI? The report breaks it down into 2 key types. Are they using it for automation, just handing off a whole task like, hey, write this code for me? Or are they using it for augmentation, more like collaborating with it, asking things like, can you explain this concept to me? And this is where the data reveals a really critical pattern. It turns out that the lower adoption countries, they tend to use AI for that simple automation. But the high adoption areas, they're using it for augmentation, for collaborating, for learning, for creating. This could point to 2 completely different paths for how economies develop from here. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We've talked about individuals. Now let's look at how actual companies are deploying AI, because this is where that split between automation and augmentation gets even more dramatic. So when individuals use a tool like Claude.ai, you see a really wide variety of tasks. Yeah, a big chunk is for coding and math for sure, but you also see a lot of use in education, library science, even the arts. It's a really broad, general-purpose tool for people. But now, look at this. When businesses use that same AI through an API, the picture changes. It gets way more focused. Computer and math tasks shoot up to 44%. Office and admin work is higher too. But look at education and library use. It drops way down. Businesses are zeroing in on very specific high-value tasks. And this number right here, this just says it all. A whopping 77% of business API use is for pure automation. Let that sink in. Companies aren't primarily using AI to help their employees collaborate. They're using it to programmatically delegate and just get specific jobs done. So if that's the case, why isn't every complex business task just being automated? Well, the report points to something it calls the context bottleneck. You see, it's super easy for an AI to handle a low context request like write a thank you email. But a really high context request, like develop a new sales strategy,
Well, that requires a ton of background info, data, and nuance.
And what that all boils down to is this. A company's ability to do really sophisticated things with AI is limited by its ability to feed it good, organized, relevant data. For a lot of companies, their information is messy, it's siloed, and that creates a huge barrier preventing them from really unlocking what AI can do. So, when you put all these pieces together, the incredible speed, the geographic divide, and the business focus on automation, it brings us to our final section, the very real risk of divergence, and a critical question about our shared economic future.
So let's just quickly recap the story so far. We know AI adoption is moving at a historic pace, but it's concentrated in wealthier regions. And those high adoption places are using it more for collaboration, while businesses everywhere are really focused on automation. And the big roadblock for more advanced stuff is just getting access to good data.
And all of this leads to the central question of the entire report. Is AI going to be a great equalizer, helping poorer economies catch up to richer ones? Or is it going to be a great divider, making the gap between the AI haves and have-nots even wider? Now, the report doesn't give us a crystal ball, but it leaves us with this really powerful thought. The economic effects of transformative AI will be shaped as much by technical capabilities as by the policy choices societies make. In other words, the technology itself doesn't decide our future. We do.